Hello and welcome back everyone to this new video. So we are resuming basically our Rent Your Stuff journey and from this Jmix video series. And in this next couple of videos, what I'm going to focus on is the Jmix 2 migration, as this might potentially affect a lot of people and therefore also be valuable to a lot of people. Because most likely you will have to upgrade your application at some point as well, and then I thought it might be good to talk about what needs to be done, what are the caveats of it, and so on and so forth. So mainly I recognize that there are two strategies that we could go through, and I wanted to present that to you in order to see which might be applicable to your case. We'll also talk about which one will be used for the concrete case of the Rent Your Stuff application. But generally speaking, there are two migration strategies, which is first one, which is I called it Big Bang release, and the second one is a lazy migration. So for the Big Bang release, it's actually you can just imagine you manually on your local machine upgrade to your new Jmix version. You do all the changes that are necessary, and once you're done, you deploy it, and your users can then use the new version. This is in particular beneficial when there are smaller applications, when the amount of time that it takes to migrate to this new app is not actually that high. Yeah, it sometimes leads to longer lead times because they are depending on the size of your application, it might be a couple of days, weeks, even where you basically need to migrate everything at once. And additionally, it requires that you are able when you're not really able to control your migration, like basically deployment targets. So in this case, when you, for example, ship your software to another company that is actually running that, then it might be the only option to basically just deliver a new version, and then this is the new version that is actually the one that is already on Jmix 2. On the other side, we can have lazy migrations, and this is in particular, so it basically boils down to two sub areas here. So the one is that it runs within the same Java application. So in this case, the idea, or like in general, the idea of lazy migration would be that somehow you make it work that you can have the old version and the new version of Jmix running in parallel. In particular, this means we are talking about the Vaadin version here, because this is the one that creates problems when running simultaneously. And then there would be an option to do it in the same application theoretically. There are just this is just very problematic to do with the Vaadin 8 to Vaadin 24 migration, just because of the technical incompatibilities that are existing. And thus I will not even consider that here. There is, probably it's worth mentioning that there is something from Vaadin that allows to run Vaadin 8 and Vaadin 24 apps in the same Java app, or basically views in the same Java app, but this is not very well tested with Jmix. I'm not even sure if this would work at all. So I think in our case we can just simply ignore that. Just wanted to mention that for completeness sake. And then we have the option of running two parallel applications, and this is basically the idea that you're literally running two Java apps, the old one and the new one, in parallel, and somehow then do this migration screen by screen, or feature by feature, however you want to call that. And in the meantime, the users are going to see some areas of the application that are running in the new system and some areas of the application that are running in the old system. You can try to make that easier to navigate and to use by, for example, linking those two apps together with UI. like with browser links and so on. Um, yeah, this, but there is like a UX caveat that should be taken into consideration. And then additionally, most likely it would be beneficial to have like some kind of authentication mechanism that is centrally managed and not as part of the Jmix application itself, because otherwise the people would have to yeah, basically log in both cases, or like in both apps. So that being said, now if we look at this version incompatibility, just wanted to mention that here. I mean, I'd already talked about it, but the just outlining this dependency tree here. So JMix 1 on the left side actually depends on Vaadin 8, right, as we know, and it also depends on Spring Boot 2.x. And the Spring Boot under the hood relies on this JavaX namespace. Yeah, and on the other side, JMix 2, they migrated now to Vaadin 24. And Vaadin 24 under the hood relies on a newer version of Spring and Spring Boot. And in particular, then we have the situation that Spring Boot 3 requires actually the Jakarta namespace. So what this picture is supposed to be showing is that it's quite complicated if we would want to change Vaadin and basically run in the same Jmix app both Vaadin versions. Then they would require different Spring versions, which rely on different the JavaX versus Jakarta namespace. So it's just quite complicated to achieve. So we will therefore just take that as granted and just think about other ways on how to do this migration. So perhaps before we now dig into the details of how we want to do the upgrade, I just wanted to point out that mainly the main big thing that changes is really this Vaadin version. Of course, we also have, like as we see here before, we have a dependency upgrade from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. So this potentially changes a couple of things in the back end, like in your business logic and your entity model and so on. But these are comparably small changes in comparison to the Vaadin 8, Vaadin 24. And this is really because the Vaadin 24 or Vaadin Flow, as they now call it, is really a different framework. It's basically a re-implementation of these old concepts. It's not using GWT from Google anymore, which has been outdated since a couple of years. So this is why it was very much needed to have like such an upgrade to a later Vaadin version. And of course, it also brings UX improvements. So you can, I don't know, use the refresh button. You can, yeah, use more browser capabilities. Then there's mobile support and so on and so forth. So there's really a lot to gain here. But this also means that there's quite a bit of change needed in order to make that running. Okay, now coming to the point on how we want to do the upgrade. So over the next videos, I will go through a couple of areas in this migration, right? But the general idea here is that we will have on the left side, you can see that this is the existing Rent Your Stuff 1.5 application. And then I will create a new application, most likely via a Git branch, and basically create a new IntelliJ project and run it side by side, which will be the target application where we will migrate to the Jmix 2. And then additionally, I will create another empty Jmix 2 application just in order to see how a blank app and all those infrastructure like the Gradle files and the I don't know, like this front end directory, and there are a couple of things basically that we want to take over, and this is what I will then take over from this empty Jmix app project. So this is basically how we will run. And so when we look at the videos that I was planning to do, then in the first one we will talk about this, I call it project infrastructure. It's really just making the all the required configuration files and the changes according to those files available. Then in this next video, domain model and tests, I will basically try to copy over all of the domain model and all of the integration tests for the domain model and for the business logic, and then try to make it compile and make it run. And at this point in time, we don't have any UIs, so I will just remove all of the UIs from this target application in order to have come to a point where we can run the application again without any compiler errors. And then I will basically start with the CRUD UIs. In this case, it can be this product UI that we can take a look at, and then we will regenerate the views, because in the old version it will also mainly generated stuff, and then we'll just regenerate that and look at how it looks in the Jmix 2 world. And then in the next video, the UI test for CRUD UIs. This is basically where we'll then take a look at the existing integration tests, the UI integration tests that we have had, and then we will try to mirror those. There will be a couple of changes as well, because all of those helper classes that we created, where we have different integrations with the Vaadin components or with the Jmix 1.x UI components, this is of course affected as well, so we'll have to adjust that accordingly. And then in this next case, I will, this is basically the last video where we'll probably talk about these more advanced UIs. I'm not 100% sure. Perhaps it will be this this order UI, and then we will try to migrate that accordingly. So I think this really outlines on what I had in mind on how to do it, and then we'll go through each in each video, just practically try to make it happen. Then you can see how I tackle those problems. It will be slightly different compared to the old videos, compared to the by the fact that I will not do everything on tape, because it's just it would just require a lot of time, and I'm not sure if this would actually be beneficial for everyone to watch me migrate it for 2 hours or whatever. So this is why I will pick the most interesting aspects from each sub area, and then I will try to make it or I'll explain where I then afterwards did finish this stuff on my own. All right, so with that, I think we have a plan. I'm looking forward to it, and thanks for watching, and then see you in the first video.